Okay, so you have a prospect on the phone and they're being standoffish, right? They're not really engaging with your presentation and giving you short form answers, right? Maybe one word answers, but they're letting you continue with your script, right? So what do? We found most agents just keep powering through their script because the prospect's letting them. Like, oh, great, they're letting me, so they're probably going to buy. But that couldn't be further from the truth, okay? If you've been in the business a while, you know somebody who's standoffish on the phone, you get to present the rates, they're likely not going to buy from you, right? So how do you handle this? The default answer from a lot of telesales trainers out there is to build more rapport, right? You got to build more rapport. You got to get them to open up, all right? It's such a default response by life insurance trainers out there. Well, it's true, right? You have got to be building rapport all the time with all your prospects, right? But that only gets them comfortable with buying from you, right? You need to influence them to make a buying decision today. And that's what you got to do to standoffish people. You have to influence them, not persuade them with your scripting, right? It's not about the nuts and bolts or anything about learning about the product, right? When you have somebody who's standoffish, you can't persuade them into making a decision. You have to influence them. Persuasion is spurring someone to make a decision without actually earning their sincere buy-in, right? This is where you're going to have persistency problems and chargeback issues, right? If you're just powering through scripts and trying to persuade people and hard close them, right? You need to influence. Influence is motivating someone to make a buying decision. And that's the key to telesales, really, okay? Figuring out what your prospect needs to hear to make that buying decision, right? And the only way to do that is to really tune into your prospects while you're on the phone with them, right? It doesn't matter what product you sell, final expense, term, IULs, doesn't matter what scripting you use, it all will work. If you can master tuning into a prospect, right, and uncover what influences them to make a buying decision, that's what you need to do. That's the true skill right there, okay? And it all starts with being completely present on your phone call, all right? What I mean by that is not thinking about your last call, right, that you just had that you didn't sell, or not focused on just getting to the finish line with your script, right? Only if you get to the finish line you can quote them, and drum roll, let's see if they're going to buy. Like that's not how it works, right? You got to be completely present and not let anything really distract you, okay? It's so important on these calls. It also means not passing any judgment based on the way they talk, right? If your prospect talks a certain way, or says something, you cannot pass any judgment. You have to really tune into those prospects. If you're thinking about, I get agents who have admitted to me that they think about how much a lead costs them, when they get somebody who gave a smoke screen at the beginning of a phone call, an objection, right? Because the intent level wasn't the highest intent level of a prospect they've spoken to before when they made the sale, right? You're judging. You're not being present. You're not tuning in. It's not allowing you to tune into what actually motivates your clients to buy life insurance, right? So I know when agents get someone standoffish, they assume the intent level isn't there, right? And at that point, you already lost the sale, okay? And every prospect is influenced and motivated in different ways. Now, your prospect is giving you tells, right, throughout your presentation. And if you play poker, tells are information that people give you by, you can just look at somebody if they, how they are, if they're bluffing or whatnot. You're getting information, you're getting tells on phone calls, right? And you've got to tune into what those are to uncover their motivation for buying, all right? So of course, they want to cover, the financial burden, right? Anybody who you're talking to on the phone, they want to cover the financial burden for their family, for burial if it's final expense, right? For, replacing their income if it's term, protecting retirement if you're doing any sort of IUL type stuff, right? But what is motivating them to do this, right? You know the why, but what's going to motivate them to buy today, right? That's what you got to figure out, all right? And so you've got to tune in and not pass any judgment to uncover this, okay? So you have somebody on the phone who's standoffish, right? They're not giving you much information. Their answers are short. They're not engaging like a buyer traditionally would, okay? So an agent who is completely present and tunes in, right, would understand that this client wants to buy coverage, right? They want the coverage. They want to do the right thing for their family or else they wouldn't be talking to you right now, right? They want to do it. You just need to motivate them to do it, okay? These prospects who are standoffish, they know they should do this for their family. They should do it. But they themselves still need to be convinced it's a good decision. That's why they're standoffish to you. They're still convincing themselves that they're making a good decision. That's exactly why they're being standoffish, okay? If you look at it from your prospect's point of view, right? They know they should do this thing. They're buying an intangible product that they make payments on for the rest of their life, and they don't get to see the end result of it, okay? If that's the case, where you have a disengaged prospect on the line, standoffish, right? And, as you're moving through your script, you need to remind them on just how noble of a decision this is, okay? You need to keep commending them on taking care of this today, right? They need to hear how good of a decision this is, and they need to hear it often, all right? And powering through your script isn't going to motivate them to buy. Sure, you're giving them all the information, but you have to motivate them, okay? You can say stuff like, hey, I can tell you really love and care about your family. They'll really appreciate this. Or it's great you're taking care of this today. It's one of the noblest things you can do for your family, right? They need to hear that multiple times throughout your presentation, all right? So, in addition, they need to hear about how this affects their families, okay? So one of the best ways you can do this is share a 2 to 3 sentence story about yourself if you have one, right? Anybody who sells life insurance over the phone, you need to have a 2 to 3 sentence story about yourself, okay? Something as simple as, hey, when my father passed or when my grandfather passed, I remember the feeling of relief and or love our family had when we found out everything was taken care of, okay? It made remembering him so special. Something along those lines. If you don't have a story like that, borrow somebody else's, hey, my best friend's mom just passed away, and, keep going and say the same thing, or whatever it is, okay? And by sharing something personal, you've built a connection, all right? There's different ways about addressing this, okay? But in order to motivate someone who is on the phone with you, who thinks they should do this, needs to keep hearing how good of a decision it is, right? They think they should. Keep telling them they should. Keep telling them, right? You've got to give every opportunity 100%. You have got to tune into your prospects here and understand these things. And you can only do that if you're fully present and you can recognize their tells, their cues, which gives you a direct line to their subconscious, okay? Sales is emotional. You've got to stop trying to rationalize your way into a sale and tune into what motivates your prospects, okay? So to recap here, we found that standoffish prospects need to keep hearing about how great of a decision it is they're making, all right? They also need to feel it with a story, okay? They know they should do it. They're on the phone. They're letting you go through your whole presentation. You have to do something extra. You cannot just power through a presentation and think somebody who's standoffish on the phone is going to buy from you, all right? As a telesales agent, tune into your prospects. Be completely present on the call. You'll be able to understand these cues, right? And this is just with somebody standoffish, right? This works with, you can pick up cues on a lot of different situations, right? Information is being given to you at all times. When somebody calls in and they just say, I just want to get some quotes. That person, they know they want the coverage, right? But they just need to understand that they can trust you, right? Somebody calls in and says, hey, can you send me a brochure? Or, you call somebody up and, hey, just send me the information. Can you mail it to me? Like that person you need to understand, like if you really tune in there, those types of people are just saying that they need to see if you're legit. That's it, okay? And so you deflect and you build rapport and you maybe say some things that make them that maybe share your license number. Lots of people share their photo, share some reviews, things like that. That will really help somebody who sends a brochure, who says that at the beginning of the call, to make a buying decision. Again, all these different cues you can pick up. I'm talking about just being standoffish on this call because it's something that I know a lot of agents get on the phone. So I wanted to make sure we went through that one on this video. Okay. Well, I hope this helps, and thanks for listening.